He was the man beside the throne. Philip Mountbatten, born Philippos Andreou of Greece and Denmark, was a war hero, royal consort, and pillar of duty.
When you go through life trying to make a legacy, no, I mean, I think to try and create a memorial to yourself while you're alive is slightly indecent, I think. I'd rather other people decided what legacy I'd left. I mean, life's going to go on after me, and if I can make life marginally more tolerable for people who come afterwards, or even at the time, I'd be delighted.
For over 7 decades, he stood as the Queen's unwavering shadow. Admired for his discipline, loyalty, and blunt wit. But behind the carefully crafted image of the loyal consort, whispers lingered of a private life more complicated than the palace dared acknowledge. At the heart of these murmurs was one woman, Helene Cordet, a French-born entertainer, a dazzling presence on stage and screen, and, curiously, a longtime friend of Prince Philip. She had 2 children born out of wedlock, their father's identity never revealed. But the Duke's quiet support of them raised questions that remained unanswered. Was this just kindness between old friends? Or a royal secret hidden in plain sight? Could Prince Philip have quietly supported a second family outside the royal spotlight? Or was this merely another royal myth? One of many, left to swirl in silence. But before we confront the rumours, who exactly was Helene Cordet? How did she earn the trust, perhaps even affection, of Prince Philip? And what bound them together in a friendship that would endure a lifetime? They didn't meet by accident. In the rarefied but restless world of pre-war and wartime Europe, where royals without thrones mingled with artists, aristocrats, and émigrés, their paths inevitably converged. Britain and the continent were alive with tightly woven social circles, the kind where a young naval officer with no kingdom and a rising entertainer could cross paths again and again. It was in these liminal spaces, between privilege and exile, between duty and identity, that Philip and Helene found one another. Each carried the imprint of displacement. Philip, a prince without a country, exiled from Greece as a child and raised across France, Germany, and Britain. A life packed into suitcases, and a name tied to a history he barely got to claim. Helene, born in France to Greek parents, navigated a Europe in flux, a world rearranging itself as she carved out a life in the performing arts. Their shared cultural roots, their fractured upbringings, and the emotional solitude of exile forged a quiet but enduring bond. One that would survive decades of war, the weight of royal life, and whispered scandal. In Philip, Helene may have found more than a familiar name. Perhaps a kindred spirit, someone who understood the weight of dislocation. And in Helene, Philip found a confidant, a mirror to the disjointed contours of his own life. But then, how was a child born into Greek royalty, a prince by blood, come to live as an exile? Long before Prince Philip's birth in 1921, Greece was a nation caught between dreams of expansion and the brutal realities of politics, war, and national identity. His story would begin not in a cradle of royal privilege, but in a crumbling kingdom on the brink of collapse. The youngest member of a royal family on the run, his identity forever altered by the turbulent fate of the Greek monarchy and the powerful lineage that shaped and nearly destroyed his early life. Philip's family belonged to the House of Glucksburg, a branch of Danish royalty. His great-grandfather, King Christian IX of Denmark, was known as the father-in-law of Europe, as his children had married into royal houses across the continent. One of them, Prince William of Denmark, was chosen in 1863 to become King George I of Greece, establishing a new dynasty in a still young modern Greek state. King George I, Philip's grandfather, reigned for 50 years, during which Greece grew significantly, both in land and national pride. His leadership helped the country gain territory in the Balkan Wars of the early 20th century, where Greece fought alongside its neighbours to push back the weakening Ottoman Empire. The victories were celebrated. Thessaloniki, Epirus, and much of Macedonia were now under Greek control. But just as Greece began to taste the fruits of ambition, tragedy struck. In March 1913, King George was assassinated while walking in the streets of newly liberated Thessaloniki. The throne passed to his son, King Constantine I. Constantine, Prince Philip's uncle, would become one of the most polarizing figures in modern Greek history. A decorated soldier and a respected strategist, he was also married to Princess Sophia of Prussia, tying the Greek royal family closely to the German Empire, a connection that would soon prove disastrous. As the First World War engulfed Europe, Constantine's German ties clashed with those of his prime minister, who favoured the Allies. Their disagreement escalated into the national schism, a deep political and social divide that tore Greece apart. Under pressure from Allied powers, Constantine was forced to abdicate the throne in 1917, and another son of George I, Alexander, took the throne. But just 3 years later, Alexander died unexpectedly from a monkey bite, and the throne reverted back to Constantine I in 1920. Meanwhile, Constantine's younger brother, Prince Andrew, and Philip's father, continued his career in the military. After the war, Greece attempted to capitalize on the defeated Ottoman Empire by expanding into Asia Minor. In 1919, Greek troops, including those under Andrew's command, landed in Smyrna and began an ambitious campaign into Turkish territory. But the tide turned quickly. Turkish nationalists, led by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, mounted fierce resistance. The Greek army was driven back, and in 1922, Smyrna was lost in a fire and a massacre that claimed tens of thousands of lives. The Greek dream in Asia Minor had ended in ashes. Back in Athens, blame fell squarely on the monarchy. King Constantine was forced to abdicate once again, and a military tribunal arrested and prosecuted key leaders of the failed campaign, among them Prince Andrew. His punishment? Exile. And so, in the winter of 1922, the royal family fled. Prince Andrew, his wife, Princess Alice of Battenberg, and their infant son, Philip, only 18 months of age, were evacuated aboard a British warship into an uncertain future. He had been born Prince of Greece and Denmark, but Greece no longer wanted its royals, and the boy who would one day marry a queen began his life as a stateless exile. This was the world Prince Philip was born into, not of privilege, but displacement, loss, and confusion. A royal child without a kingdom. In late December 1922, a British naval ship docked quietly on the French coast. On board was a family banished from their home, disgraced, displaced, and uncertain of what lay ahead. Among them was baby Philip, completely oblivious of what this move really meant. His family's escape from Greece had been urgent, and their safety now rested in the hands of King George V of Britain, Philip's great-uncle, who had personally arranged for HMS Calypso to guarantee their safe passage to France. They settled in St. Cloud, a quiet suburb of Paris, in a home generously loaned to them by Princess Marie Bonaparte, a wealthy psychoanalyst and Philip's aunt by marriage. It was a temporary refuge, but hardly a fresh start. Though surrounded by relatives, the family lived on fragile ground. Their royal titles meant little in exile, and money was tight. Prince Andrew, stripped of his role and reputation, had no work, and Princess Alice, deeply religious and emotionally sensitive, began showing signs of severe mental illness. Suffering delusions and breakdowns coupled with an unraveling grip on reality. By 1930, she was diagnosed with schizophrenia and committed to a sanatorium in Switzerland, where she remained for many years. With Alice institutionalized and Andrew lost in a life of gambling and detachment, the family fell apart. Philip, still just a boy, was left without stable parents or a fixed home. His 4 older sisters, Margarita, Theodora, Cecile, and Sophie, had all married into German aristocracy, leaving Philip largely on his own. He became a child of shifting addresses, moved between relatives in Britain and Germany, adapting to new surroundings, and learning early how to fend for himself. It was not the ideal childhood of a prince, but it shaped the man he would become. After a turbulent early life spent across Europe, Philip arrived in Britain in the late 1920s to live under the guardianship of his maternal uncle, Lord Louis Mountbatten. A powerful and ambitious figure, Mountbatten became instrumental in shaping the young prince's future, particularly his education and naval career. Philip's formal education in the UK began at the Cheam School in Surrey, London's oldest private prep school. But in 1933, Mountbatten made the controversial decision to send Philip to Schülerschloss Salem in Germany, a progressive boarding school run by Kurt Hahn. The aim was to toughen the young royal and offer a modern education. However, with the rise of Nazism, Hahn, who was Jewish, fled Germany, and Philip followed him back to Britain. He would later enroll at Gordonstoun School in Scotland, founded by Hahn himself. The school was austere and rigorous, designed to build character through discipline, service, and physical endurance. Encouraged by Mountbatten and shaped by his demanding schooling, Philip entered the Royal Navy College at Dartmouth in 1939. He stood out quickly, excelling both academically and physically, graduating top of his class in naval theory. As the Second World War broke out, his training was accelerated, and at just 18, Philip began active service, eventually seeing combat in both the Mediterranean and Pacific. He served aboard HMS Valiant and HMS Wallace with distinction, earning respect for his leadership and composure under pressure. This bravery garnered him rapid promotions, rising to the rank of First Lieutenant by 1942, one of the youngest in the Royal Navy. Meanwhile, Helene Cordet had also moved to Britain from France. As war ravaged Europe, she fled the German occupation and settled in London. With her cosmopolitan charm, eloquence, and fluency in French and English, Cordet quickly rose to prominence as a radio broadcaster for the BBC's French service. Her warm, engaging voice became a beacon of resistance for for occupied France. And she gained public admiration as a symbol of Allied resilience. As Cordet's career flourished, she reconnected with Philip, now a decorated naval officer. Their friendship picked up where it had left off years before, maturing into something deeper and more complex. They were often seen together at social functions. Reportedly, Cordet occasionally acted as a hostess by Philip's side, especially in the period before his courtship of Princess Elizabeth. Some even claimed that she was one of the few women with whom Philip could relax and be entirely himself. It is, however, believed that Prince Philip and Helene Cordet first met as children in the 1930s, possibly in the coastal French town of Le Touquet. At the time, Cordet's family lived in France, and Philip, exiled at infancy, would visit with relatives. Their families, linked by aristocratic and expatriate circles, are said to have occasionally spent holidays together, laying the foundation for a bond that would endure for decades. In 1939, Philip would meet Princess Elizabeth for the first time during a royal visit to Dartmouth. She was just 13, but clearly smitten with the confident naval cadet. Their correspondence began soon after, and over the war years, it blossomed into a serious relationship. By 1946, Philip had asked King George VI for Elizabeth's hand in marriage. But during this same time, his friendship with Helene Cordet continued. Their proximity raised questions, especially as the royal spotlight turned towards Philip. Then came the most controversial twist. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, Helene Cordet gave birth to 2 children out of wedlock. At the time, this was considered highly unconventional and socially risky. But Prince Philip didn't distance himself. On the contrary, he supported her quietly and became godfather to both children. It didn't go unnoticed. Whispers began. Was there more to their relationship than friendship? Tabloids speculated on a possible royal scandal. Still, neither Cordet nor Philip ever addressed the rumours publicly. Helene later married a man who gave her children his surname, but she never revealed the identity of their biological father. For decades, their friendship endured, even as Philip became prince consort and Cordet transitioned to a quieter life. They remained in contact. The press continued to speculate, but neither confirmed nor denied anything. To this day, no definitive evidence has emerged to prove that Prince Philip fathered Helene's children, but neither have the whispers ever completely faded. A prince and a broadcaster, a war hero and a media star, from a childhood friendship to a reconnection, in the heart of a world at war. For a lifetime, they stood by each other, publicly quiet, privately close. The truth may have gone with them, but the bond between Prince Philip and Helene Cordet remains one of the most intriguing personal stories behind the royal curtain.